Let me tell you, I wasn't expecting to get dragged into a war with a homeowners association when I bought my patch of land outside Cedar Ridge. I'd done my time, 22 years as a Marine, 3 tours, learned the value of silence, of land under your boots, and no one barking orders in your ear. All I wanted was peace. Just the wind in the cedars, the call of birds at dawn. Maybe a good tomato crop if the season was kind. That's why I picked this 3-acre wedge on the edge of suburbia, just outside the new development, up on a rise with a barn that looked like it had stories to tell and a boundary line that, far as I could tell, was as clear as day. No codes, no committees, no newsletters. Just quiet. But you want to know what happens when you live next to people who think rules don't apply to them. Here's how it starts. One morning, 6:30, a cement mixer rattles me awake. I'm in my boots, coffee not even brewed, and there are contractors in hard hats on my side of the fence, laying rebar in a pit that definitely wasn't there yesterday. You know this isn't your land, right? I ask. The guy with the clipboard just shrugs, says it's an HOA project. And if I have a problem, I can take it up with the board. Like I'm supposed to just roll over. So, I do what any sane person does. I call the city, call the HOA, call my buddy Mark who's a lawyer and still owes me for that time I got his kid into the ROC. The city confirms I'm right. My land, my boundary, no HOA jurisdiction. Mark tells me to keep records and wait. But when I show up at their next board meeting, polished floors, fake smiles, coffee that tastes like regret, I get stonewalled. Richard, the president, acts like I'm interrupting his day, not pointing out a pretty egregious land grab. Dana, the realtor on the board, insists there's confusion about an easement. I ask to see proof. She blinks, changes the subject. The room gets tense. They tell me to wait a week. Review the documents. Yeah, right. I'm not waiting. That night, I walk my fence. Sure enough, they've poured 6 feet of foundation onto my side. I mark it out, measure twice, flag it bright orange. Next morning, the crew's back. More rebar, more concrete, more arrogance. I send cease and desist letters. Nothing. Mark sends an official notice. Still nothing. It's like they think if they act confident enough, reality will bend to fit their plans. And that's when something in me snaps. Not anger, not yet. Just this old, familiar resolve I thought I'd left behind. They forgot I built bases in war zones under fire, that I know exactly how to defend ground, and that every survey line in this country is a little slice of law. So, I pull out every deed, every survey, get my own third party guy to check the pins. My documents match to the inch. But they keep building. HOA newsletters already bragging about their new aquatic center on land they don't own. Now, I could have gone full cowboy, but that's how you end up in handcuffs. So I document. Photos, video, drone shots, daily logs. Even record the contractor admitting, on tape, that the board told him not to worry about the line. The city shrugs, civil matter, they say, not criminal. And the HOA? They double down. Claim there's an easement I never signed. I dig up every record, prove no such agreement exists. Doesn't matter. They start playing dirty. Citations for my barn, which is older than the development, drive-by inspections, weird cars parked near my fence at night. At this point, I realize it's not about a pool. It's about power. If the HOA looks strong, if the neighbors see them winning, it becomes fact. But the board made a mistake. They forged my signature on a supplemental easement agreement and filed it with the county. Mark and I catch it immediately. A sloppy fake, but enough to muddy the waters and stall legal action. You'd think this would make me blow my top, but if anything, it focused me. We file fraud complaints, escalate to the city, call in an inspector who finds out the clubhouse has an illegal basement. No permit, no drainage, nothing. And remember, my land sits 9 feet higher. Under my barn, a forgotten concrete culvert, built decades ago to drain floodwater before any of these houses even existed. You see where this is headed, right? The board ignores every warning, forges on. The pool opens with a big party, balloons, ribbon cutting, all the smug faces clapping themselves on the back. The sky turns gray. I send one last letter, hand-delivered. I'm activating my drainage infrastructure, not responsible for runoff during seasonal rain. They laugh, send me a threat from their lawyer. But the first big storm of the season hits, and I document everything. The slow rise of water in the tunnel, the first trickle under the clubhouse, the cameras catching the exact moment the basement starts to flood. By dawn, the place is underwater. HOA records, servers, everything. Margaret from Environmental Services shows up, recognizes the tunnel, confirms it's legal, pre-existing, and not my fault. The city finds the HOA into oblivion. Illegal construction, stormwater violations, the works. The board tries to blame me, but the evidence is overwhelming. Surveys, photos, video, witness statements. Even their own newsletters boasting about progress 6 feet onto my land. Residents turn. Meetings fill with angry questions. Richard resigns. Dana quits. Harold comes by with an apology and a lease offer for the stolen land. I turn him down. Not selling. I want my ground back, period. Soon after, bulldozers tear up the pool. The board is dissolved, and a new leadership takes over. Ironically, the same neighbors who once called me troublemaker. They ask me to advise. I say yes, under one condition. Never again does the HOA get to override property rights without every homeowner's consent. Months later, the land is green again. My barn's repaired, garden thriving. The old pool site is now a native plant garden. No banners, no ribbon cutting, just the quiet eye. Fought for all along. The city installs permanent survey markers. New policies protect boundaries, and the neighborhood starts to heal. But every so often, I sit on my porch, watch the wind in the cedars, and remember how fast a little arrogance can turn into a flood. So, here's the question I'd ask you. Where's the line between progress and respect, between ambition and theft? When does, for the community, become an excuse for crossing someone else's boundary? Drop your thoughts below, because let me tell you, sometimes the quietest person on the block is the one you shouldn't underestimate. That you'd think after the flood, the lawsuits, and all those news cameras parked outside Cedar Ridge for a week straight, things would finally go back to normal, right? You'd think the folks who'd clapped at ribbon cuttings or whispered about the problem neighbor would be too embarrassed to show their faces, but that's not how small towns work. People have short memories for their own mistakes and long ones for other people's. Even so, life started settling into a new routine. A routine I didn't quite trust, not at first. It was strange. After months spent fighting, letters, filings, city inspectors tromping through my barn, I suddenly had free time. I patched the barn roof, dug out old tomato beds I'd neglected, and started staining fence posts again. The way I used to before the HOA ever thought about a pool. Every morning, I'd find a neighbor walking past my gate, some just nodding, some waving, a couple even stopping to apologize. Eyes darting to the ground as if sorry could unpour concrete. Daniel, the guy who brought a six-pack, remember him, actually became a regular. He'd lean on the fence with a can of beer, asking about the soil, how to keep deer out of his beans. I could see he felt guilty, but honestly, I was tired of being angry. I just wanted to feel like a neighbor again. Sometimes I caught myself almost laughing, thinking how far we'd come from threats of lawsuits to garden talk at sunset. But there was one more fight, even after the pool was rubble and the board was gone. Turns out, property lines don't just exist on paper, they live in people's minds. Some folks wanted a fresh start, but others, well, they wanted to pretend the whole mess never happened. Rumors kept swirling. Some said I'd flooded the clubhouse on purpose. Others said I had secret pull at City Hall. I wish. Shelley, who'd stood up at that first angry meeting, became the new HOA president. First thing she did? She came straight to my door with a clipboard, flanked by the new team. She looked nervous, like maybe I'd slammed the door, but all I did was offer her coffee. She laid it out. Honest, the new board wanted help. Not power, not a handout, just a watchdog, someone who'd speak up before things got ugly again. I looked around at my little slice of land, my battered barn, the slope now sprouting green where the pool used to be, and thought, hell, maybe this was the one thing worth doing. My one condition was simple. No more clauses in the bylaws that let the board override property rights, ever. Everything above board, transparent. They agreed, and for the first time in months, I saw a real relief in Shelley's eyes. We shook on it right there in the mud. After that, things really did start to change. Monthly open forums. Board meetings moved to the school gym, with everyone welcome and no more locked doors or smug faces. HOA finances published. online for anyone to see, right down to the penny. Hell, they even started a volunteer landscaping crew so folks could work off fines instead of just paying them. I'd show up sometimes, boots muddy, just to make sure no one was measuring my fence again. But healing takes time, and not everyone wanted to move on. A few holdouts still clung to old grudges, muttering about lost dues or blaming that veteran with the drone. Richard, the old president, tried to run for city council, lasted about a week before the press dredged up the forgery scandal. Dana moved out entirely. The rest faded away like bad memories tend to. Funny thing, when the city finally approved the restoration plan, they didn't just let the old pool site sit empty. No, they planted a wildflower garden, put up a wooden sign that read, "Land returned to original state. Respect the boundary." The first time I saw it, I laughed out loud. Maybe a little corny, but after all that mess, it felt like justice. I spent that summer rebuilding more than fences. Fixed the barn gutters, added rows of honeysuckle and basil along the line where the orange survey flags used to flap in the wind. Every so often, I'd see a neighbor stop and read the new sign, linger for a second, then move on. Sometimes, a couple of the new board members would drop by for advice. Should they repaint the clubhouse? How to handle a dispute over a tree limb? That sort of thing. I always told them the same thing. Start with respect. End with the truth. Everything else is just noise. One morning, I was working in the shade, hands deep in the dirt, when Shelley showed up again, this time with a new piece of paper. Unanimous vote. Permanent survey markers for every shared line in the whole community. No construction allowed without a certified boundary check. Thought you'd want to know, she said. I grinned, wiped my hands on my jeans, and told her it was the smartest thing the HOA had ever done. Sometimes I'd sit on my little bench at the edge of the property, beneath the red maple I planted to replace the pool's old diving board. I'd watch the sun move across the garden, listen to birds overhead, and realize for the first time in a long while, I wasn't waiting for the next battle. The line was clear. The air was still. The land was quiet. Maybe that's what justice really looks like, not a gavel dropping or a big speech, but neighbors talking over a fence, a letter of apology, a garden where there used to be a pool. Maybe it's just knowing you stood your ground, and the world didn't end. So, I'll ask again, where do you draw the line? When does standing up for yourself become the only way to protect something that matters? Leave your answer in the comments, because believe me, this world could use a little more backbone and a lot more respect for the land that holds us all up.